Welcome to Imaginary Lands, the works of award-winning author and storyteller Bobby Pell. Today's live performance, Lydia, a Jamestown legend, is a tale I grew up with in North Carolina, where friends of a friend of a friend said they had picked up this lovely ghost trying to make her way home. Many urban cultures have such tales, but this one will give you the chills.
All right, this last tale that I want to tell you, not only are there ghosts over in England, but we have our own versions as well. Not only Appalachian, but down where I'm from in Greensboro, there's a ghost who's rather well known, named Lydia, and I'd like to tell you her tale. Lydia was 18 in the summer of '38. She had fallen in love with a boy 2 years older than herself, and she just thought he was everything to her. Now, Lydia was a girl who really loved her parents and got along with them great. They had an incredibly wonderful relationship. But on this one point, they differed. Now, they thought that not only was this young man too old for her, but they thought she was too young to be getting so serious, and they told her not to see him anymore. Well, that summer, she disobeyed her parents, and she snuck out as often as she could. And when fall came, he went to stay down in Raleigh and wrote to her often. One of the letters told her about a dance that was coming up in October. He really wanted her to come. He said, "I'll make arrangements. I'll find a dorm. We'll give your folks the number. We'll make sure that everything's great. Ask them. See what they say." So she got real excited. "Mom, Mommy asked me to do a dance. Can I go? Mom, this will be so much fun with all the college kids." And she, of course, said no. Well, she thought to herself, I got a couple of weeks. I'll work on them. So she did all these extra chores. She was just as good as gold. She even went as far as to buy a party dress. Now, back then, the off-the-shoulder dresses were the style with the great big skirts. She bought one solid white, looked beautiful. In fact, she even got her mother to take a picture of her in it. Well, the day came, and the young man had said that he would drive from Raleigh all the way to Jamestown, where she lived, which is about a 2.5-hour drive, to come get her and take her home. As he pulled into the house, into the driveway there, he heard this incredible ruckus coming from their home. This was very unusual, and before he could even get out of the car, he sees Lydia. Here she comes, the door slams open, she's got her dress hooked over her arm, suitcase in the other, tears just streaming down her face. She comes in there, throws her stuff in the back seat, jumps in the front car, and just screams, "Go!" And he did. It took her about an hour before she could calm down enough to tell him what had happened. "It was the most dreadful thing. I said awful things to my parents. They said terrible things to me, but they made me so mad. I don't understand it. You're so wonderful. Why can't they see that? I don't understand it. You made all the arrangements so they'd feel comfortable about this. Oh, I just don't understand them." And she vented for about another hour, as women sometimes will do. And by the time she got to Raleigh, she was feeling a little better. Well, they went to dinner, got dressed for the dance, and went to the dance. But once they got there, instead of having a really great time like he thought she would, as the night wore on, Lydia got quieter and quieter, and finally just downright sad. At midnight, she looked at him and said, "I know you've really gone to a lot of trouble for this weekend, but I cannot go to sleep tonight with this rift between my parents and myself. Will you take me home?" Well, it had started to rain very gently outside, and he looked at that, and he looked at her, and thought about the long day he'd had, but he loved her. He said, "Of course, I'll take you." So they got all their belongings and got in the car and started making their way down. As they did, the rain picked up a little bit. First, it was just a gentle rain. You could barely hear it. But as they got closer to Jamestown, it got harder and harder and harder. Until it was a torrential downpour. Now there was a curve on old Highway 70 on their way that was right beneath the trestle. And the boy knew that sometimes this was called Dead Man's Curve. And so he was as careful as he could be coming into this. But the rain was coming down so hard that as he got into it, he lost control of the car. And it hit the trestle bridge. Lydia was thrown from the car and killed instantly. He survived without a scratch. 30 years later, a traveling salesman was making his way through the Piedmont area. He'd already done his bit down in Raleigh and was coming through Greensboro on his way west. And he liked the scenic route, so he liked staying on old Highway 70. Well, as he was making his way this October night, he noticed that it began to rain just a little. So he put on his wipers and was driving along, and he'd heard about this real dangerous curve right near the trestle before he got to Jamestown. So he was keeping an eye out for it. And as he did, he said, oh, there's the train signs. I guess I'll start slowing down. And as he did, he got to where the arch underneath the trestle was visible. And he thought he saw something through his windshield wipers. And he looked, and there standing right beside the arch appeared to be a young girl dressed in a white party dress. And she was completely soaked. Well, being the gentleman that he was, he pulled the car over immediately and went up to her and said, Miss, is there anything I can do? Can I take you somewhere? Are you in trouble? And she looked at him and said, will you take me home? He took off his raincoat and put it around her shoulders, helped her into the back seat of the car, and said, of course I will. They started driving. And when he looked in his rearview mirror, he noticed how upset she was. So he decided not to make chit-chat like salesmen often do. But he had gotten the address from her, which was a fairly well-known road. But he did have one nagging question. He said, excuse me, miss, I just want to ask you one thing. What's your name? She looked at him and said, Lydia. He drove onto the house, and because the night was late, he decided not to go into the driveway because he didn't want to wake anyone in the household with his lights. So he parked on the street. He turned off the car, opened his door, and went around the front of the car because he was going to let her out of the back. As he got to that back door to open it, he noticed that she was gone. And folded very neatly on his back seat was his raincoat. Well, he thought to himself, I must have missed her as I came around the front of the car. She was so upset she probably just ran in the house. I'll just go check, make sure she's all right. So he went up to the door and he knocked. And when he did, a light in the foyer came on, and the door opened. An older woman stood there. Excuse me, ma'am, I know it's really late, but I just wanted to check on the young girl. What? The young girl. I just wanted to make sure she got into the house all right. And the woman got a real sad, kind of knowing look on her face and invited him into the parlor. When he came inside, he saw that on the mantel over the fireplace, there were lots of family photos. And one of those photos was of a young girl in a white party dress. And he looked at it more closely and he said, yes, this is the young girl. I just picked her up down at the trestle on old Highway 70. Is this your daughter? And the woman said, yes. He said, well, she said her name was Lydia. I just wanted to know if she's okay. And the woman said to him, I want to thank you for your kindness, but my daughter died over 30 years ago. You're not the first to try to bring her home to me. Many have tried, but for some reason, she never makes it to the door. That's the story.